Zillow flipped their forecast, the Fed may cut rates next month, Warren Buffett just bet nearly $1 billion on home builders. This isn't a coincidence, this is a signal. And if you've been sitting on the sidelines waiting for the market to crash or correct, you may be missing the flip that's already begun. Because while everyone's watching the headlines, smart money is already making moves. And here in Florida, we're seeing early signs that the market is turning quietly and fast. Over the next few minutes, I'm gonna walk you through what most buyers and sellers aren't seeing yet, the data, decisions, and the downstream effects that are already reshaping the market. We'll cover what Zillow just changed in their pricing model, why Jerome Powell's latest comments matter more than people realize, and how Buffett, DeSantis, and even Florida insurance companies are all shifting in the same direction. By the end, you'll understand exactly where we're heading and how to get ahead of it before the market leaves you behind. So let's start with the quietest clue that something big is coming: Zillow. Because while most people are still watching crash headlines, they've already changed direction. Earlier this year, Zillow's forecast was grim. They were projecting home prices to decline by about 1% nationally, and in many Florida markets, things were looking even softer. But in July, they quietly flipped that forecast. Now they're predicting 0.4% growth over the next 12 months. Now sure, 0.4% doesn't sound exciting, until you remember where they started. That's a full reversal in direction, from negative to positive. And here's what makes it even more interesting. Florida is still marked as a buyer's market on Zillow's own index, 33 out of 100, well below neutral. But that index, it's been ticking upward for 3 months straight. That doesn't happen unless the fundamentals are shifting. This is how it always starts, not with headlines, but with subtle changes that only insiders and data nerds pick up on early. Zillow isn't screaming from the rooftops, but they've already adjusted their models. Why? Because buyer activity is rising, inventory is tightening, and affordability, while still a challenge, is stabilizing in some areas faster than expected. So the question is, if Zillow sees something shifting, what are the policymakers seeing? Well, just days later, Jerome Powell took the stage at Jackson Hole. If Zillow flipping their forecast was the quiet warning, then what Jerome Powell said next was the market's foghorn. And hardly anyone's talking about it. At the Fed's Jackson Hole meeting in late August, Powell finally opened the door. After over a year of interest rate hikes and months of waiting for a clear signal, Powell gave one. Not by announcing a cut, but by saying this: "We will proceed carefully." And to most people, that sounds cautious. But to investors, economists, and the real estate market, it was loud and clear. Why? Because the Fed only gets cautious when they're near a pivot point. And almost immediately, top brokerages, Barclays, BNP Paribas, Deutsche Bank, shifted their forecasts. They now expect a rate cut as soon as September. The CME's Fed Watch tool, it's now showing an 87% chance the Fed drops rates at their next meeting. Here's what that means for the housing market. When rates drop, demand rises. And when demand rises, sellers stop negotiating. Builders pull back incentives, prices start to firm up. It doesn't happen all at once, but we've seen this pattern every single cycle. And if you're waiting for the market to feel different before you act, you're already late. This kind of setup doesn't go unnoticed. And in fact, it didn't. So before the Fed gave us their signal, Warren Buffett already made his move. And it wasn't subtle. Berkshire Hathaway, Buffett's firm, recently invested nearly $1 billion into just 2 companies, D.R. Horton and Lennar. Both of them are new home builders, all of them tied directly to the housing market's future direction. Now, Buffett doesn't day trade. He doesn't time tops, but he's also rarely early. He waits for blood in the streets, then he buys. So what does it tell us when he's putting hundreds of millions into the very companies that build homes for the middle class? It means one thing: he's betting demand isn't going away. He's betting that once rates drop, people will come flooding back into the market and builders will be the first to benefit. And he's not the only one. Private equity firms and institutional funds have been quietly increasing positions in the housing-backed REITs and land holdings across the Sun Belt. They're playing the long game. The media may still be pushing the crash narrative, but the smart money is placing quiet bets that the bottom is already in. But there's one piece that could either unlock this entire comeback or bring it to a grinding halt, and that's affordability. And nowhere has that challenge been louder or more misunderstood than right here in Florida. But what if I told you that storm might finally be clearing? For the last 2 years, the Florida real estate story has been dominated by one word: insurance. Exploding premiums, limited coverage, and some insurers pulling out of the state entirely. It became the talking point, especially for out-of-state buyers who backed out the moment they saw a $6,000 quote for wind and flood coverage. But here's what most people don't realize: that crisis might actually be turning a corner. Since Florida passed major legislative reforms, 15 new insurance companies have entered into the state's property insurance market. And not just offering hurricane coverage, offering it profitably. Even Citizens Insurance, the state-backed safety net, is lowering premiums for 20% of its policyholders this year. The first sign of softening we've seen in years. In fact, litigation, the #1 reason insurers were leaving Florida, is down 25% year over year. That's massive. For buyers, this changes everything, because in many areas, especially new construction, we're already seeing insurance quotes coming back lower and in some cases well below expectations. And remember, lower insurance premiums directly affect monthly affordability. If you're buying at the edge of your approval, a $250 drop in your insurance premium could make or break your deal. This isn't about the market getting cheaper. It's about the cost to carry a home starting to stabilize again. And that's what brings buyers back in. Insurance relief is a huge step forward, but it's not the only lever being pulled right now, because Florida's leadership is taking a hard look at what else is eating away at affordability. And that brings us to property taxes and a bold proposal that could reshape home ownership across the entire state. Affordability isn't just about interest rates or insurance premiums. It's also about where your money goes after you buy the home. And Florida may be about to rewrite that part of the equation too. Governor DeSantis recently proposed a plan to issue $1,000 property tax rebates to homesteaded homeowners. Not next year, but this December. It's not just a promise. It's a funded proposal that could be signed off before the end of the year. But that's just the start. His longer-term vision, a 2026 constitutional amendment that would completely eliminate property taxes for Florida homeowners. Now, is it controversial? Absolutely. It raises all kinds of questions about school funding, county budgets, and replacement revenue streams. But the fact that it's on the table at all shows how serious the state is about long-term affordability, not just short-term band-aids. And while affordability is one piece of the puzzle, what about accountability? Florida is also rolling out the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to audit local government spending across the state. And they're not just issuing reports, they're already uncovering wasteful spending in cities like Cape Coral, Fort Myers, and across Lee County. That may not sound like a housing story, but it is, because bloated local budgets lead to higher millage rates, inflated service fees, and unnecessary permits that drive up the cost to build, renovate, or even just own. If Florida can cut waste while protecting essential services, the trickle-down impact to property owners could be huge. So between insurance premiums falling, property tax relief growing, and local government audits tightening the belt, Florida isn't just reacting to a crisis. It's actively positioning itself as a better place to live and own. So here's the question. Is it working? Are people still moving here? If Florida's still too expensive, too risky, or too broken, then why are people still moving here? Despite the headlines, despite hurricanes, insurance hikes, and political noise, Florida ranked number 4 in the nation for inbound moves, according to U-Haul's 2024 migration report. That means more people moved into Florida than almost anywhere else in the country. Again, it's not a fluke. Florida's been in the top 5 for over a decade, and people aren't just coming for the beaches anymore. They're coming for opportunity, sunshine, lower taxes, and a lifestyle that still feels like freedom compared to where they're coming from. From New York to New Jersey, Boston to Chicago, families, retirees, and remote workers are still loading up trailers and heading south. And here's the crazy part. They're not all buying multi-million-dollar beachfronts. Many are chasing value. Neighborhoods like Babcock Ranch, Alva, and Lehigh Acres. Areas with space, affordability, and long-term upside. That sustained demand, even during a so-called buyer's market, is exactly why Zillow flipped its forecast. It's why Buffett made his move. It's why the Fed's rate cuts matter more than ever. And if you're still waiting for a crash before you buy, or waiting for the market to go back to 2020 prices, you may be waiting forever. Because when demand is strong, policies are shifting, and investors are positioning themselves, you're not looking at the end of a cycle. You're looking at the beginning of something new. And if you've been paying attention, the signs are everywhere. Let's recap what you just saw, because it's more than a collection of stories. It's a pattern. Zillow flipped their forecast, the Fed signaled a rate cut, Buffett just dropped nearly $1 billion into home builders, Florida is seeing insurance and tax reforms, and people are still moving here in droves. This doesn't look like a market in free fall. It looks like a market reloading. And while the headlines still scream about affordability and higher rates, insiders are quietly positioning themselves before the next wave hits. Here's my forecast. We're in a shrinking buyer's window right now, a rare moment where leverage still exists. Builders are still offering incentives, and monthly costs are starting to ease just enough to create movement. But once rates drop, expect demand to surge, expect bidding wars to return in pockets, and expect sellers and builders to pull back their offers. You don't have to time the bottom. You just have to buy before the crowd comes rushing back. And if you're selling, you need to understand this timing more than anyone, because pricing your home now with the right strategy and local insight could mean thousands more than waiting for the next peak. I'm Rick Harrison, a top realtor here in Southwest Florida, and if you're wondering whether this area might be the right fit for your next move, check out this next video where I break down the top areas in the region, the pros, the cons, and all the insider insights you won't hear from the average agent. If you're planning a move, whether it's your first home, a vacation home, or your forever home, grab my free relocation kit. It's designed to help you move with clarity and confidence no matter what stage you're in. And if you're serious about buying or selling, or just want straight answers to your specific situation, call me, text me, or send me an email. My contact info is right in the description. No forms, no spam, just a real conversation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.